Don't know what our next guest has been doing to kill time over the last couple of months. Hopefully keeping busy wherever he might be. He's the lead analyst on ESPN. He's also with Team USA. Jeff Van Gundy, kind enough to stop back here in Salt Lake City. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So what have the last couple of months been like for you? What have you been up to?
A lot of long, slow walks to nowhere. So if that ever becomes an Olympic sport, I'm your guy.
Well, they've added surfing to the Olympics, so why not go with the long, slow walks?
Exactly. I think around the world there's probably been many people doing the same thing to try to kill time and get from one day to the next.
Where were you when it hit and they pulled the plug? Were you on the road? Were you at home? I had Ian Eagle on the other day. He was in San Francisco waiting to do a Nets game. I'm just curious where you were when they pulled the plug.
So I was in Florida seeing my parents on the Tuesday, the 10th would have been, or the 9th, I think. I was at a spring training game that was packed. On the 10th, it all hits, or the 11th, whatever it was. And then I flew home the next day, and I was scheduled to fly home. And I think I had a game scheduled on that Sunday somewhere. So, yeah, it all happened quick, from spring training baseball to no sports.
Was there ever a point over the last 3 or 4 months where you didn't think we would finish this NBA season?
Well, that was what I thought. I thought it was over. I'm still not completely convinced that it's going to come off because of just so many things that they have to navigate and obstacles to overcome. And so, yeah, I'm amazed that it's going forward and that they've gotten as far as they have, because it looked bleak for a long time.
So as we look at it today, and it looks like they've got a pretty good plan, or maybe as good a plan as you could have on paper, but we all know even the best game plans, they change. If you were coaching in the league like right now, if you were Quinn Snyder or you were, whomever, and you were preparing your team, you were working out in your home market, but looking ahead to Orlando, would your bigger concerns be on the basketball side of things, or would it be on the health side of things?
Well, I think the health side, the physical health side, is going to be well taken care of. I think all these teams heavily invest in so many people to try to help them navigate that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I do think that, though, the mental health issues are going to be real. I think there's going to be real anxiety. I think there's going to be a lot of boredom. It's gonna be a challenge. It really is. I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be familiar at all. And those players and those teams that can navigate their way through that will have the best chance to achieve to whatever their talent will allow them to.
Is your thought on that just simply because they're going to be kept in that same general area, albeit on world-class resorts, but being kind of confined to those resorts? Is that where you think some of that mental stress and things are going to be able to go, because they're not going to be free to go wherever they want to go?
Yeah, no family, no friends, no opportunities in your surroundings. You throw those four things in the mix, and it seems like it's going to be a very restrictive environment. So I think the ultimate champion of Bubble Palooza is going to be the team that obviously has talent, but that can navigate the hardships of living like that the best.
Did you pitch that name to Adam Silver by chance?
No, it just sort of came up. But it really is. To me, Bill, this is not a continuation of the 19 and 20 season. That season is over. The only thing that, like, the Utah Jazz are bringing from the 19-20 season forward into this Bubble Palooza environment is their record and their roster. Other than that, everybody's starting completely over. And you've had very little contact with players up until this point to know where they stand. So many guys are going to be in different states of physical fitness. It's going to be a challenge for the coach to thread this needle of doing enough to get them ready and not overdoing it and coming up with some injuries that they could ill afford and or, trying to avoid the boredom that will inevitably set in during that initial first 3 weeks in Orlando, where I think the first week together in Orlando, everybody will be doing all these things with their teams and the newness of being back together, and there'll be a level of excitement. I think in the second 2 weeks, it's going to be brutal for teams that they're still practicing, they're doing it out of market and with no games on the horizon. And really, Bill, the games for the Western Conference, the regular season games, mean nothing.
Right.
For the first 7 teams, they're all good. There's no home court advantage. So they're really just killing time until the first round of the playoffs.
What you said a second ago, though, is exactly how I feel, Jeff. This doesn't feel like this feels like a crazy one-off Olympic-style kind of tournament. Not even Olympic-style because it's best of, but it feels like a tournament outside of a season that they're going to try to determine a champion for. It doesn't. We're 106 days since the last NBA basketball game, so this is almost as long as you would have in an off season. It feels like a season between 2 other seasons. And if I'm a coach like Quinn Snyder, my biggest worry, especially if I'm not coaching the Bucks or the Clippers or the Lakers, one of the contending teams, and no offense to the Jazz, we know it here, losing Bojan Bogdanovic is a big hit for them. But I'm worried about an injury. I'm worried about an injury, a knee injury, a back injury, something that would carry into what should be next season, even though that season may not start till December. I'm really worried about some big picture stuff if I'm going down there too.
Yeah, I think every team is going to have to evaluate for themselves how they're going to use this time. Like Orlando, Brooklyn, Memphis, the 7th, 8th seeds that are okay, but they're not really good. Do they try to push for a monumental upset, or do they use it a little bit differently and moderate the playing time of their veteran players? I'm going to be fascinated to see how everybody goes about their business. And like you said about the Jazz are really good. Bogdanovic's injury is a killer, but I don't think they have to, in those 8 regular season games, to me, it doesn't matter who they play. They're not going to be the 8th seed, so they're going to be in that mix and jumble of teams that they can beat any of those teams and they can lose to any of those teams.
Do you think these guys will get used to playing in front of – I think it's going to be weird for the first week or two not having fans in the stands. Do you think they'll adapt, or will that just not be something that you get used to over the course of a month or two?
Actually, I think it'll work the other way. I think initially they'll be because I think it'll be new and it'll be different and it'll be quirky. I think they'll be fine with it. I think, you can have really good practices and you can scrimmage other teams or have an inter-squad scrimmage yourself, and you can have a high level of play, right, without fans. It's not like it's prohibitive. But I think over time, NBA basketball is based on the greatness of the players, the greatness of the coaches, the greatness of the officials, and also the greatness of the fans. And you're going to be missing one huge element to what makes NBA basketball, and particularly NBA playoff basketball, special.
A lot of people have asked the question, Jeff, does this layoff, does this new format, does it favor anybody? And I'm not sure if it does favor anybody that's not already a favorite. If it was a March Madness type setup, maybe it would, or even a shorter series, a best of 3 setup. But I think because they're keeping the same best of 7, do you see anybody that's not a Lakers or Bucks or Clippers having an inherent advantage coming into this thing?
No, I do think what would be the lower seeded teams obviously have an advantage because they're not going to be playing on the other team's home court.
Correct.
So I think,
correct.
That helps. I don't think young or old helps. I really do believe it comes down to what team, and particularly what best players are most excited about playing right now. And I don't know that. And I don't think anybody does. And I think we'll see how it works out. And I can't blame some of these. I don't blame some of these teams and players who are more anxious than maybe other teams and other players. I don't know about you, but Houston is one of the epicenters right now, and that's where I live. And I'm telling you, I'm a little bit more anxious over the last couple of weeks than I was in the previous couple of weeks. And I think that could change from the time they're in their home cities to the time they go to Orlando and start to actually live the existence that they could only have read about before. So I'm interested.
Where will you guys be? If they've given you an idea, will they be locating you in the bubble at all, or will you guys be calling games remotely?
Not sure yet. I think the plan is to do it from down at Disney, but things change, and they haven't given us a firm idea. And again, I think there's so many things that are subject to change, and rightfully so. I think the one thing about the people at ESPN that I work for, they are incredibly consistent in their care for their employees. And so I think what they're doing is consistently evaluating what's best. And whatever they decide, we're going to roll with.
Moment or two more here with Jeff Van Gundy here on the Bill Riley Show today as the NBA ramps up to its return to play in the bubble. Obviously, one of the big news stories here in Salt Lake City, but also around the league, at least early on in the pandemic, was the apparent, whatever you want to call it, riff between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Dennis Lindsey has come out subsequently and said they're good. We've never heard a word. Donovan Mitchell, for as gregarious and outgoing as he is normally, has been very quiet in this period of time. Nobody knows what's going on there, but you coached long enough and you coached enough personalities over the years. How did you deal with teammates, especially key teammates, that maybe necessarily didn't get along? What's your role as a coach? What can you do as a coach if you've got a couple of players and pretty key players that maybe aren't on the same page?
Well, you got to deal with it directly, and I'm sure Quinn has. And I coached Donovan during the World Cup. I love him. He's a terrific guy and competitor. And he and the rest of his Jazz teammates had every reason to be disappointed in Gobert's nonchalance about a very serious health risk. And yet, when you were 27 or I was 27 or whatever age Gobert is, I was a knucklehead. I did stupid things, and I would hope that people would forgive me for my bouts of stupidity. And so I understand both Mitchell's initial disappointment in Gobert. I understand Gobert's knuckleheadedness, and hopefully there can be forgiveness.
Yeah, and again, only time will tell on that. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure if being quarantined or locked in that bubble will help or hurt that situation, but you're right, Quinn and Dennis Lindsey, I'm sure behind the scenes, are trying to do as much as they possibly can here. Before I let you go, the guy that I used to do the show with that now does afternoons with us here, he and I worked together for years. He's now the afternoon host of Spence Checkets. We get a lot of Knicks stories from Spence's perspective. I would love, from a Jeff Van Gundy perspective, for our listeners, what was a teenage and young Spencer Checkets like as he used to roam the halls of MSG? What was the teenage Spencer? What are your recollections of one Spencer Checkets back in the day?
The main thought or the main remembrance is his seats were right over what used to be where you walked out, both teams, like the tunnel, and he would give it to the opposing team. And unlike his dad and other siblings, sometimes Spence's vocabulary could expand into PG-13 range.
Did his dad always keep it pretty PG?
Oh, his dad, yeah. His dad was he could cut through you like a knife with the kindest word, you know? So, yeah, his dad was a great leader. It was a huge loss. That, to me, is when the Knicks started slipping, is when Dave left, because Dave was such a great leader. He was sorely missed and is still sorely missed.
Was there ever a time where Spencer had to be kicked out of practice or someplace where he was observing a shoot-around, Jeff?
No.
Okay.
No, they always were incredibly polite as far as, their respect for practice. No question.
Excellent.
Their dad wouldn't have taken that.
No, Dave would not have tolerated that, that's for sure. Do you have a long, slow walk planned for this afternoon, or is it too hot and humid in Houston right now to be doing any long, slow walks?
I'm already done for the day. My slowness was earlier, so, yeah.
Hey, thanks as always. Great catching up with you. Be safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to basketball here soon. Thank you, Jeff.
You got it, Bill.
Take care. Jeff Van Gundy with us here on the Bill Riley Show today.